Thanks, Bob. With full disclosure, I'm a diehard Eagles fan. Anybody here? Oh, okay. That wasn't a good start. That was not a good start. Okay, well, basically, I'm here. I'm the campaigns coordinator of FreedomWorks. I work with these guys over here, and I'm here to introduce Matt Kibbe. Matt Kibbe is the president and CEO of FreedomWorks. Before coming to FreedomWorks, Matt is an economist by trade. He graduated from Grove City College right here in Pennsylvania, so he's a hometown hero, I guess you can say. He's the best-selling author of Give Us Liberty, a Tea Party manifesto that came out last year. He's also written Rules for Patriots, which we gave you today when you came in here today. He actually just finished getting off MSNBC with Chris Matthews, and I can tell you he did a great job. It's funny because Chris Matthews likes to give it back to his guests and always wants to cut them off, but he can't get a word in with Matt because Matt's too smart for him and does too much of a good job and knows the issue. So I'm going to stop talking because I'm not nearly as important as him. So I want to, without any further ado, Matt Kibbe, president of FreedomWorks.
Full disclosure, I grew up on the western side of Pennsylvania. I grew up in Erie and Grove City, so I'm a Steelers fan. Are there any Steelers fans here? Well, as long as there's no Browns fans, we're good. So I was on Fox and Chris Matthews tonight. I'll be honest, Fox is a little bit funner when you're on TV, but I really think that the media establishment, just like the political establishment, they're coming to terms with who we are and what we're doing, and we've gone from that caricature of phony, and then they started calling us names. I think when we talk to the media now, and we've been talking to them all week as we've traveled across Pennsylvania, they take the Tea Partiers seriously, and that's because of the work you guys do. And because you're willing to show up, you're willing to understand the issues, and you're willing to engage the other side in a civil debate about the future of our country and the future of the state of Pennsylvania. That's where the power comes from in grassroots. It's all about showing up. We have this slogan at FreedomWorks, government goes to those who show up. And from the very first days of the Tea Party movement, we've been showing up against all odds. They ignored us for so long, and first we showed up in dozens, and then we showed up on April 15th. I counted almost 1,000 events across the country in April 15th, 2009. And then how many guys came to 9/12/2009? That was pretty cool, huh? Isn't it awesome not being able to get into a city because there's so many people just like you? By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Brendan is one of the guys that convinced FreedomWorks and the coalition that was done. I thought he was. If this stops working, I'm just going to start shouting. But do you mind if I just? Hello? Can you hear me now? What was I talking about? Oh. Brendan loves this part of the story. But he came to us at FreedomWorks and said, I think we should do a march on Washington. And people all over the country want to do this, and there's such hunger to come to D.C. and petition our government for a redress of grievances. And I said, are you crazy? You're never going to get that many people to come to D.C. because at FreedomWorks, we've been trying to organize people for over 20 years. We studied the Boston Tea Party. We studied Saul Alinsky, and I underestimated what was going on, but Brendan talked us into it. So when we got there that day, it was just awesome. It was awesome. You guys exceeded all expectations. And up until that day, we were a protest movement. We were sort of banging on the door of big government saying, you need to take us seriously, you need to let us in. And they ignored us and ignored us, but on 9/12 they couldn't ignore us anymore. And from that day forward, we became something else. And they were saying going into the November election, well, yeah, you guys know how to protest, you know how to show up and fight big government healthcare plans, but surely you're not going to get out the vote. And then November 2nd came, and we had a historic election, unprecedented since 1934, massive Tea Party class coming in the House and the Senate. And then almost immediately the media started saying, well, yeah, the Tea Party movement knows how to get out the vote, but surely you're not going to engage in the legislative process. So that's where we are today. It's sort of, I call it Tea Party 3.0. We're not a protest movement anymore. We got their attention, and we don't want to just continue to do what we did before because, as Saul Alinsky says in rule number 7, if you keep doing something and it becomes a drag for your activists, you're gonna fail. And I butchered that, but that's kind of what he said. We're not, at the moment at least, a get out the vote movement, but we have to turn all of these campaign promises and all this work we've done for so long into real legislative accomplishments. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not that excited if Republicans win over Democrats and we take the House, we take the Senate. I don't really care about partisan victories anymore. I've been doing this long enough. And we spent so much time at FreedomWorks fighting Republicans that were supposedly our friends, only to be disappointed again and again and again. We're not going to let it happen this time, because the difference today is that there is this constituency for freedom called the Tea Party movement that doesn't just show up on election day. We show up 365 days a year. And that's how you do this. Politicians will always slide back into their political ways if there isn't a constituency of people that are going to show up again and again and again and insist that they keep their promises, insist that they actually do what's right for the state, for the county, for the country. Because I've watched good Republicans go bad. I've watched bad Democrats do good things. And from my point of view, politicians are like children. They have to be disciplined, they have to be guided, but if you do that parenting work, we can get good public policy. So that's where we're at. And the reason FreedomWorks is so interested in what's going on in the States, I think back to 1993, 1994, before the National Republican Revolution, before the contract with America, we had very much the same fights in the States. In Wisconsin, which has been ground zero for the fight against big unions in 2010, we had that same fight in 1993 against the welfare establishment. We took on welfare reform. Everybody said it couldn't be done, but we had a governor who was entrepreneurial enough to know that if you stood for something that mattered, if you're willing to fix the broken budget process and replace bad institutions with good ideas, that people would show up and reward that. And that created the intellectual and the political momentum for the federal efforts to repeal welfare as we know it and replace it with something else. And we even got Bill Clinton to agree with us after he vetoed the bill 2 times. What's going on today? All of the states that turned from bright blue to bright red, I like to say that they actually turned Gadsden yellow. By the way, you're the first group that got. Everyone stares at me. Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, Indiana to a lesser extent. These are the places where we're fighting these big budget battles now, where we took legislatures, we took governor's mansions, and now the fight is to actually pass an agenda that will do something for the people of Pennsylvania. And, from my point of view, each of these fights in each of these states is different iterations on the same theme. We're fighting government union power. Maybe it's pensions, maybe it's lavish fringe benefits, maybe it's bloated healthcare systems that are twice as generous as workers in the private economy get. I think here in Pennsylvania, it's about beating the union bosses that control our education system. And if we succeed, this will be a bellwether for the rest of the country. Governor Walker needs to succeed in Wisconsin. We need to make sure that the people of Wisconsin keep showing up. We do need to balance the budget in Pennsylvania without raising taxes. And from my point of view, I've been fighting school choice for 20 plus years. This, to me, is one of the most important fights that I think I've ever been in. And I want to make sure that every parent and every child in Pennsylvania gets a choice and gets an education that will get them where they need to be in their lives. But I think we got to start somewhere. And for all of the imperfections in this bill, I think it's a big step in the right direction. I think that from my point of view, just from a moral point of view, if I could rescue one kid from one failing government school, I would take that fight. So we're a little frustrated because the Pennsylvania legislature is sort of dragging its heels on all of these priorities. We look at what happened in Florida with their new governor and their new legislature. We look at what Mitch Daniels was doing in Indiana. We look at what John Kasich is trying to do in Ohio. We look at Governor Walker standing firm against the violent goons that showed up at the state capitol. Pennsylvania's got to catch up a little bit. You know how we get that done? We show up. You show up again and again and again until they get the message, until they understand that the people of Pennsylvania aren't going to put up for business as usual. And where we go next after that, we have to win these fights. But think about the states that I've been talking about, and think about 2012 and the electoral map and all of these federal battles we have to fight. Every one of these states has a potential Senate pickup. Every one of these states, I believe, is going to be the battlegrounds, definitely for the presidential general cycle, but I believe with the decentralization and the power of the Tea Party that the Republican primaries are going to go on well past Iowa and New Hampshire. They're going to come to all these battleground states, and that's where we get a voice. It's no longer about money and establishment recognition and the fact that Mitt Romney can raise $10 million in one quarter. I don't know what you guys think, but to me, he looks a little bit like the Charlie Crist of the presidential cycle. So my view, and I know people are frustrated, and some people feel like the political establishment is still ignoring us, still dismissing us. I think if you look at what's going on in these states, and you look at what's gone on with the freshman Tea Partiers in the House and the Senate, we've redefined the debate in Washington, D.C., and even in the state capitals. Nobody there wants to talk about spending. Nobody there wants to talk about the federal debt. But even the Democrats, who haven't put a single serious idea on the table, are now forced to debate on our terms. And that's a huge step in the right direction. We got the Republican Party to finally step away from earmarks. It's a little bit like crack for them. They're drawn to it. They keep trying to go back, but the only thing between them and their old spending ways, again, is us.